Our next talk will be done by Daniel Roßner. Daniel Roßner is working together with Claus at Hof University. He is also working on his PhD, and his talk is about, let me see the title, it's about Weblinks, augmenting web browsers with enhanced link services.
So, hi Jessica, thanks for your intro, and hi all. It's nice to see some familiar faces again. So, you should see my presentation now. Is this right now?
Perfect.
Great. So, as already mentioned, I want to talk about our project Weblinks, where we try to augment web browsers with enhanced link services. And that is a joint work of Claus and Daniel Urban, our master's student. Both are with us today, and of course myself. I will start with a short outline. In the beginning, I want to talk about some differences of links, of the link model in the web and navigational links as they are discussed in the hypertext community. Then I want to talk about why we want to extend the web, so to speak, and how we did it. Then I will show a live demo or some screenshots depending on time and if the technique works. And I will close with talking about what we are currently working on and what we plan to work on. First, a short definition of two terms I will use frequently in the following slides, just to mention that in the beginning. One of that terms is Mother. Mother is the name of our component-based open hypermedia system developed in our research group, and it was implemented with the focus on spatial structure services and spatial hypertext, and the second term is Dexter. I think it's familiar to most of you, the Dexter Hypertext Reference Model, well aged today, and the Dexter Hypertext Reference Model is an abstraction of a wide range of existing and future navigational hypertext systems. So if I talk about links today, I mainly will talk about navigational links. So I talked about the difference of the link model in the web and links, how they are, for example, defined in the Dexter reference model. On the one hand, web links are unidirectional, so you can go from one source document to another target document, but you cannot travel the same way back. Whereas in Dexter, you can perfectly do such bidirectional links. Links in the web are unary, so a link basically is a pair of one source document and one target document, whereas Dexter, for example, allows unlimited arity, so that a link consists of many endpoints, so many sources, many targets. And last but not least, links in the web are embedded in the document. So if you want to create a link, you need a write access to that document, whereas in the Dexter reference model, the link is a first-class object, so it's separated from the actual content and from the actual documents. This slide basically shows the same I just mentioned, but in a more graphical way. On the left-hand side, a typical web link in an HTML page. What you need, you know that, is two documents, a source document. It's in the top. There you need to define an anchor, and the anchor has a ref attribute where you can reference a target document. And in the target document, you may, if you want to, add another anchor element which with a name attribute so that you can link to a specific range in the target document. To create such a link, you need at least, as I already said, write access to the source document. And if you want to link to a specific range of the target document, you need write access to that document as well. On the right-hand side, you see a reduced model as it is described by Dexter. We have a link object, it's the circle in the middle, and it can have many endpoints. For example, we have a HTML page here, some other HTML pages, a PDF or a book. Everything is possible, which can be referenced by a URI. And you see that there are some additional properties. So you see this from, to, and bidirectional keywords here. And that means that, for example, this page here is a source of that link. So you can, if you visit this web page, you can go to this page, and this page, and to this page as well. The same is true for this page. It's a bidirectional endpoint, so you can go to the to documents, but you cannot go to a from document because a from document only can be a source and not a target. And if you are on a target document, you cannot go back to bidirectional or from, because that's basically just a target document. So what did we not implement? We do not have a complete implementation of the Dexter reference model. For those who are familiar with the model may know that there are many properties and many different layers, because Dexter tries to be sufficient for a wide range of use cases. And we wanted to focus on the navigational properties. So we cut off a lot of the stuff in Dexter, and we left over with what you see on the right-hand side. We have components in our system. A component can be everything that is referenced by a URI. So if you're talking about the web, that may be web pages, HTML, pictures, videos, whatever. We have links, which are a component as well. So they have a URI. So you can have a link that links to a link. Links consist of endpoints, as you saw in the picture before, and the endpoints have a direction, bidirectional, from and to. Bidirectional means this is a source and a target. From means that the endpoint is a source, and to means that the document is a target. The target is defined by the component, again with a URI, and you may add an anchor. An anchor is there to specify a specific range in the HTML page, or a specific part of a picture, or a timestamp in a video, for example. Oh, I scrolled back. So the next slide. So why we want to extend the web. And I could not start this slide without a quote of As We May Think. And if you look closely, we already saw this quote in Jacob's keynote. He didn't highlight it, but we can highlight it here. The process of tying two items together is the important thing. And this is something that does not work in the web today. So we cannot create links between arbitrary web pages, because we basically need write access to these pages. This idea is not entirely new. So there are some older solutions and attempts to do that. And what we wanted to try is to give them a technological refresh. So we stick to current web technology and want to make it a productive system in education scenarios and many other scenarios. But I will talk about these in the end of the talk. So how did we do it? We cannot change the web. The web is as it is, and we are a small research group. So there's no way to change it in some days or weeks. The only access point we have is to change the clients we use to browse the web. And this is the web browser, and luckily web browsers already offer an API so that we can plug in our own code and can augment web pages, or you may note ad blocks would do the same. They remove content and we will add content, namely links. And of course, we need a link service that is a server component, which basically manages link objects, because they are not embedded in the web page, so they have to be somewhere else, and they are in the link service, so to speak. So concerning web browsers, from the beginning, we had the goal to be able to run on many browsers, because if you want to have a productive system, for example, students which use a wide range of browsers, but you cannot really write a plugin for any of these browsers. So we had to stick to some standard, and luckily there is one. It's only a draft. It's the W3C browser extensions group draft. And on the Firefox side, we have the Web Extensions API, which is very close to that draft. And on the right-hand side, we have all the Chromium-based browsers, Chrome, the Opera, and the new Edge browser from Microsoft, which use the extension API, and the extension API is at least close to that draft. So we started implementing a plugin for the Chrome browser, and with some minor changes, it runs on Firefox. You may notice the Apple users Safari is missing because they're doing their own thing. So our solution currently only works on the browsers you see here. So this is a quick screenshot, and I will show you a live demo in a few seconds, but just to give you the basic ideas of what we try to achieve. You see a screenshot of the HUMAN’20 workshop webpage, and it looks different than it looks if you open it, because I have the plugin installed, of course. What you see first is that we have some highlighted parts in the web page. And the highlighted parts are endpoints of links. So for example, the highlighted headline here consists, is part of a link, which we can click here. This part here is an endpoint of the same link, and the blue part is the endpoint of another link. And it was really important for us to have a native feeling of browsing. So if you're used to a normal web browser, then you are used to using the plugin as well. That was the basic idea, to visually embed our links and our endpoints in the web page. So we do not want to reinvent the wheel. So if you are familiar with Hypothesis, this is a browser plugin as well. You may see some, it's really similar to our solution, but they're trying to achieve something else. They offer a conversation layer over the web, which is really interesting because we already talked today about an annotation layer over the web, and that's exactly what Hypothesis does. You are able to mark specific ranges in web pages, and then you can annotate them, and you can discuss these annotations with other users who are able to see your annotations. And we borrowed some of the code of Hypothesis and some of the ideas. So they, for example, have a sidebar on the right-hand side as well, which looks similar to ours. So thanks to them. And the most important part we borrowed from them is the web annotation data model. The web annotation data model is there to be able to make these anchors. So for example, there is a range selected here, the same as in our plugin is possible. And today we have very dynamic web content, so we cannot really make specific parts accessible, because for example, there might be an ad. Ads might changing, or the webmaster may change the design of the web page, but we still want to be able to select the same part of the page, even if the page is changing over time. And the web annotation data model is a good foundation for this problem. It's a recommendation, not a standard yet, but hopefully in the future it will be adopted to be a standard. And it's a common model in syntax to express and possibly combine selections. For example, the web annotation data model defines XPath selectors for XML-based documents, or text quote selectors, which works with quotes. There are other selectors for pictures or videos as well. And there are even the possibility to make composites of such selectors, like that we have a range selector, and the range selector consists of a start and an end, and the start can be defined by other selectors and the end can be defined by other selectors again. So this is a great tool to anchor content if the web page is changing over time due to dynamic stuff that we have today. In the end, the model something looks like this. So we have links that may look something like that. A link has a URI defined by the link service. A link has many endpoints. For example, one that looks like this, a bidirectional endpoint, meaning that this endpoint can be a source or a target. It's example.com in this example, and it has an anchor ID. So this is everything concerning the link service. So you may ask yourself, okay, but where are these selectors? The selectors are in a metadata service. We have Mother as an open hypermedia system, and we try to separate different things in different services. So we don't see selectors as a native part of links, but they fit into the metadata service, such that we have a triple store in the metadata service where we can have triples of information. The subject, for example, may be this anchor, this one here. The predicate is a has selector, and the object of the dribble is the selector itself. For example, something that looks like this, a text quote selector, which quotes for with the prefix asking and the suffix permission. And if you look at the example domain page, you will see that that perfectly fits this part of the text here. Well, so the screenshots, but you don't have to stick on the screenshots because I can show it you live. So I'm on the example domain and I give it a refresh so that you see that I don't cheat. You see that the heading of the page is highlighted in red, meaning that this is an endpoint of a link, and we can see the link in the sidebar. It's a bidirectional endpoint, so we can navigate from there to any other endpoint, which is a bidirectional endpoint or a to endpoint. If we click here, we see a list of the other endpoints, and for example, we can go to this one here. It's the conference page of Hypertext 16. You already see the anchor here looks somehow specific to us. That's right. If I send a link to you, you won't have this highlight and you won't have your browser scrolling to this section. That's because the plugin handles this anchor here and gets the selector from the metadata service, selects the right part of the web page, highlights it, and scrolls to it. So what we can do now, we can, for example, go to the organization. I saw that Jamie is with us, and Jamie is an endpoint as well. It's a to endpoint, and usually we cannot traverse links from a to endpoint, but as this is a development version of the plugin, we can do something that is not allowed. For example, going from to endpoint to a from endpoint. So we can, for example, go here. It's the Hypertext 15 page, and again, there will be some part selected, and it's the general share of the Hypertext 15. So now I want to show you how we can create a new link. It's just a quick demo. For example, we have to add first a new anchor. We can give that anchor a name. Then we select the part of the web page that we want to be the anchor. So Jessica is here as well. So we can make a highlight here, add a new anchor, add this to a local link, meaning that this link is not yet added to the link base. And then we can go somewhere else. For example, we can go here, and I don't know. It's working, so we can add another anchor, test2, highlight something else. For example, this, add to local. Here it is. And now you see it's highlighted, and we can travel this link back to Jessica and back and forth because both were bidirectional endpoints. Okay, so time is tough. So back to the presentation. I talked about what we are currently working on, and what you just saw is a proof of concept. It's a demonstrator. You see the usability is not perfect yet, so we are working on that and want to have a productive plugin. First, in the scenario of lectures and teaching. So we want to create a tool that allow lecturers and students to create and share annotations and links. Lecturers, for example, can create narratives. So we have a whole bunch of web resources if we teach good stuff that's not created by us, but by others. For example, YouTube videos or wiki pages or tutorials that are in some text resource. And the lecturer can create trails from them. So he's able to create links to web content that it's not owned by him, and students can follow these links. And they, of course, can use the plugin to create own associations between web resources. Sorry. Okay, that currently it looks something like this. It's still a click dummy and work in progress, but you see that the sidebar looks way more polished than what you just saw before. And I'm hoping that we can go open source with that in a few months. And our goal is to grow a reasonably large user base. In the beginning, of course, it will be our students of our lectures, and we hope to get some insights in how such a link service will be used, how students and lecturers structure links is unlimited arity really necessary? So do students or users in general use the possibility to create links with multiple endpoints? Do they need bidirectional endpoints, or are they just happy with what the web offers them, so that we have links with one source endpoint and one target endpoint? And what is their intended communication when they are share links? These are all open questions, and we hope if we have the productive version ready and a reasonably large user base that we can answer these questions. When I talk about answering questions, I think I closed in time, and I'm happy to answer your questions now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Daniel, for this interesting talk and this great demo. So, do you have some questions for Daniel?
Well, that depends. The selectors we use are somehow able to compensate if, for example, a new paragraph is added, because you can use a text quote selector as part of your selection hierarchy. And of course, when you add a new paragraph, that won't change the text quote you originally selected. But if the changes are big, or imagine your Twitter feed, for example. Every time you go in your Twitter feed, you start at the top, and there, of course, is some content which is not loaded yet. So these are situations where the selectors, as they are currently, do not work. So it really depends. But going back to this example, meaning that there's just a new paragraph, that's not a problem. I'm not sure if you got you right. Did you mean if something is deleted that was original anchor? Okay. Currently, it would so of course the selector will be loaded from the metadata service, and the plugin won't be able to resolve that selection, of course, because the paragraph isn't there anymore, for example. The annotation can still be there, but it's not referenced anymore in the web page. So currently you will see the old endpoint, which is not part of the page anymore, in the sidebar. But not in the page anymore, of course. So it's not lost, but we don't have any really good way to detect something like this, because it may not be the case that the paragraph is deleted, but that the page changed that much that the paragraph is still there, but the selectors are not sufficient enough to resolve this again. Okay, that's a good and I think partly an open question, which we may not have an answer yet. Well, I can give you an answer what I think will be good, but I don't know if this really is good. And I hope that this is a question we may solve when we have a user base and really can test what users think is a good solution. And I think that will give a better answer than I can give to you now, I think.
Cool. Yeah, maybe Manolis and then Mark.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Daniel, it was a very interesting talk, and especially liked that you and your team resurfaced again an issue that was a very, very old issue in hypertext. I mean, the issue of backlinks on the web infrastructure is known to since the mid to end 90s. Okay, where people started to criticize the web from the hypertext community that it doesn't have backlinks and stuff like that, and try to incorporate backlinks into the web. I wonder if you have looked at existing ways of supporting backlinks on the web, and especially when you look at, because such kind of efforts are many, in particular, when you look at the Wikipedia webpage. At the Hypertext conference, there are every couple of years or so papers that discuss how to add backlinks on Wikipedia, okay? And I wonder if you have looked at these approaches and whether these approaches would could be scaled to a web environment, for example.
Okay. Yes. So as I said in the beginning, there already were other attempts to do this to the web, either with plugins as we did it, or as you mentioned, in closed web resources like for Wikipedia, where you have a closed ecosystem, so you don't have backlinks to arbitrary web pages, but backlinks within Wikipedia itself. For example, there was an attempt with Xlink some years ago, which still not became true until today and probably never will. I don't know if they really will scale, because I don't know the details on how it works in Wikipedia, but an important part is that you that any user, so to speak, is able to create links for content he's not owning. And Wikipedia is a place where you somehow own the content. So of course there's a community and cannot make that don't allow you to make some weird changes to Wikipedia pages, but you have in principle a way to edit the page, and this is something that is not really true for arbitrary web pages. So I think the only solution that scales is a solution where we change at the web as it works, or we go with some plugin solutions and externalize links in link services. And I think Wikipedia, or the attempt you mentioned, tried to do something different, but you may correct me if I'm incorrect.
So yeah, thank you very much. I think Mark, you also raised your hand.
It's a quick one. Daniel, thanks. Very, very interesting talk. I enjoyed it. I may have missed it, but does your link creation allow people to make an annotation as to why? Because it's one of the things that I see is an aim, and I think it's a very interesting thing to capture in the teaching sense. And I've sort of, it's a sense of, is it time to brush off link types again, which I know was something that were done in a rather formal sense in early hypertext. No one decided it was all far too difficult. But I think there is some value in the overall idea, not necessarily using sort of fixed vocabularies as was being done at the time for computational purposes, but even just getting people to do, some kind of short freehand annotation. I just noticed it's sort of cropping up again, and sort of rather linking what Manuel said. So there are communities like the new Rome app where people are getting terribly excited and think they've just discovered backlinks for the first time. And there's discussion about trying to capture why you're linking to something rather than just leave it all to the computer to say that this word turns up in that document. So do you think annotation might help you here?
Well, first of all, the plugin I just demoed did not feature or do not feature annotations, but for the productive plugin we plan to use for education ships with an annotation feature, because as you think, we think that this is really important to add some note, some text to it to give it some meaning. Semantic links, so that we have something like link types, is not part yet of the system. We could cover that with a metadata service, as does the link has a URI, and we of course can use the metadata service to add a type to a link. But honestly, that's nothing we discussed yet, as far as I'm right. Klaus, you can correct me, but I think this is a really interesting point and something we definitely should consider.
I mean, here, just to clarify, I mean, here I was thinking of link types in an informal, so really as annotations rather than a specific semantic thing. I mean, that also is very interesting, but I quite understand that's a, that's a whole other issue as well.
Okay.
But thanks, really interesting. And good luck with the project.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I've overlooked a question in the chat, I think, from Joel Meyer. Joel, do you want to ask your question by voice? Or shall I just read it?
I think I can ask the question by voice too.
Okay.
My question is, or my idea is, because you demonstrated earlier that in your development version, you still allow navigating backwards to the from link, and that you will not allow this in the final version. What I thought about is just a question why, because the direction itself already has a semantic meaning. So why build additional artificial barriers in a technical sense? If you get what I mean.
Well, that is a valid point, but if you go this way, then you can remove the endpoint types basically at all, because the navigational meaning is lost. Well, it's a valid point, yes, but I think, or we think, because we discussed the same, that there's a reason for these navigational boundaries of having a direction, so that you can go from there to there. Maybe you can go backwards because you have two bidirectional endpoints, but sometimes you have not. And if you think of a narrative point, so like telling a narrative, then this may be something important. Actually, because you're asking, we plan, and that's not just something I come up with just now, because we really discussed that. We added an option so that you can go back in the way you just mentioned, if you tick the option in the options page.
Ah, interesting.
In the basic version, we want to stick to that navigational boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think there is one last question in the chat from Nicola. Nicola, do you want to ask your question by voice?
Yes, thank you. So I really appreciate your project, your ideas. And I see that the tool is great to annotate pages back and forward and link. And also I see that it's very great having page annotated. So my question is, how do you think that these links could grow? I mean, created by people, by users, or if you saw the possibility to create these links with your structure that is created, because the structure is a layer up the HTML page automatically, for example, using tools or such as Common Crawl, that they crawl billions of pages. In this way, of course, you have links in one direction because are the links that you find on the page, and the backlinks could be created analyzing and data mining the data, the page that are collected by Common Crawl. Do you think that is possible? Or you have analyzed that is the way to do the thing?
Well, yes, I think that's possible. So of course we can use web crawling to analyze existing links, and then extracting the backlinks which are not really there, but of course we can infer them, and then we can add these bidirectional links to our link service, and they will be visible to users. That's perfectly okay. Never thought about that honestly, but why not? That works. And the first part of your question, I think, talked about that many users crafts the links, so to speak, and that's what we think currently of. So that many users create and share and maybe work on the same links so that there's growing a net of knowledge. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Perfect.